Hello and welcome to the 2014 U.S. Chess Championships and U.S. Women's Chess Championships here in St. Louis, the capital of chess in America. We are in the beautiful Central West End, right across the street from the World Chess Hall of Fame here at the St. Louis Chess Club. We're in round 2 of this prestigious event, the premier U.S. event, and it's been held in St. Louis for the past 6 years. We see some of our competitors always dressed to the nines here for the St. Louis Chess Club, and they're sitting down and getting ready, getting their game faces on for round 2 of this competition. We're going to have a lot of exciting matchups every round. This is no exception. Handshakes. I'm Jennifer Shahadi, and this is Grandmaster Yasser Seirawan. We're going to be with you for the next 10 rounds.
Absolutely.
As I expect, we'll always have a playoff, right? These tournaments are so tight.
Yes, so we're expecting very competitive competition here for the U.S. Championships, all Grandmaster fields, so it would be surprising, well, maybe not so surprising, but a little bit surprising if there wasn't a playoff.
That's right, and let's take a look at the U.S. Chess Championship matchups for today. We've got Onishuk playing against Ehrenberg. We have Shankland against Robson. That should be an exciting match. And here we have Gata Kamsky, our defending champion, against last year's runner-up, Alejandro Ramirez. Lenderman against Grayev, Naroditsky against Friedel, and Mackenzie Molnar against Varuzhnakovian. In the women's championship, we have our defending champion, Irina Krash, against yesterday's star, Ashrita Aswaran, just 13 years old. We have Bahinskaite against Nee, Melakina against Foiger, who played a great game yesterday. Zitansky versus Abrahamian, and Nemkova versus Irina Zenyuk. And here's our 13-year-old phenom, and Maurice has more on her amazing 83 move. I almost said 83 years old. No, 13 years old and 83 moves. That was really sweet, and Maurice has more on that.
Indeed, Jen, yesterday's game will go down in U.S. Championship Women's memory. Ashrita Aswaran, only 13 years old, playing scintillating chess. In a moment when she could have easily taken a draw, just back down, she decided to play this move, E5, a beautiful move suggested by the computer, not seen by most anyone else. And this move sets up not a winning combination, but some beautiful tactics after takes. Bishop to C4, threatening mate in 1. Her opponent defended as best she could after these couple of moves. And in this moment, the youngster missed a win with the move H3. She fought on, it looked like it would be a draw, but later in the game, her opponent made a mistake again and played this move, rook to C2, but the youngster didn't miss the second shot, bishop to E2, rook to C3, king to G4, E6, H2 check, and after this king to G2 move, bishop F1. You can't take the bishop because it would be mate, but it didn't help. Because you would promote, but it didn't help because instead it was a mating net, and suddenly the game was over. White had to resign. So the youngster now showing her stuff, but she's going to have to show some more against Grandmaster Irina Krash, 5-time champion, who had a good win yesterday. So she has her hands full in this key matchup. On the men's side, we see last year's finalists. They went to playoff. In fact, they went all the way to the Armageddon game. Gata Kamsky, the reigning champ, had to go all the way to defeat Alejandro Ramirez. So expect some real fireworks in their game as well as the second round starts to heat up in this U.S. Championship. Back to you, Jenny Yans.
Thank you. And here we see Gata Kamsky getting ready for his second round game. Yesterday he played black, and that was an unfortunate abbreviated battle.
Absolutely.
Just 14 moves, but he was with the black pieces, so does he get a pass?
Oh, definitely. I thought that Timur Gariev should have pressed on in that first round matchup, a key matchup, number 1 and number 2 seeds. Today, Gata will certainly want to press because I'm sure he himself didn't feel very pleased with the short draw that happened yesterday. So he'll want to make amends by playing hard today. But he
indicated as much in
in his post interview. But this matchup, when in the women's
She's
championship.
smiling at you.
Yeah, exactly.
All of you guys at home, she's smiling right at you.
Exactly. Arena, five-time champion, what can you say about Arena but just all superlatives. But if I were a 13-year-old going up against the number 1 seed, I sure would like to have started with a victory in round 1 to get that confidence boost, because Eswaran understands she's facing a really, really tough challenge.
And here they are. They're off. They shake hands, and we will expect Irina to be playing her typical D4 move in this game. She said that she didn't see a lot of games of Eswaran.
No.
So she...
Not many games to see at 13 years old. They're just developing so quickly.
That's right. And Eswaran had a very mature attitude. She said that she was looking forward to the game and it would be a great experience.
Exactly. But yesterday, her post-game interview, was just so fantastic. She was so well-spoken. Her answers were so well-considered.
That's right. Maurice doesn't get any credit, though, right?
No, of course not. No. And the game, some moves are starting to come in from board 1. I see that.
Yeah, no, it was really nice to see, because a lot of people ask questions about, whether girls are aggressive enough and competitive enough to play chess at the same level as boys. And I really saw with Ashritha, you saw that she was able to be this fierce competitor at the board, and then, there was no flip of the switch. The same exact person is also a very sweet, courteous young woman. And I think that that's a real good model for people at home, that you don't have to have some kind of ultra aggressive, angry personality to be one of the best chess players in the country.
Absolutely. It's kind of like entertainers, and they go on stage and they're, wow, pop, 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 sparkling, dazzling, everything. They come off the stage and they settle down and, hi, Jen, how you doing? Just normal. So this is...
Exactly.
All right.
And let's look, because we got some moves coming in, and it does seem that Irina Krush has made a different move than what she usually plays.
The English opening.
So she's played 1 C4 instead of her typical 1 D4, perhaps trying to take advantage of Eswaran's kind of lesser experience. I'm sure she was preparing for Irina's D4, and sometimes C4 openings can be kind of confusing in terms of transpositions, right?
Absolutely.
You want to make sure that if you play, for instance, a Grunfeld or the Queen's Gambit Decline, that you don't somehow get tricked into something that you don't know.
Absolutely. The C4 English opening is a kind of a cagey, you want to transpose into a defense that your opponent doesn't necessarily want. D2, D4, of course, is Irina's mainstay, and so a little bit of a surprise early with her C4, and Eswaran answered with the symmetrical English C5. As we can see, white C-pawn attacks the squares B5. Oops, my arrow is terrible. B5 and D5, and black's C5 pawn the same. All right, knight F3. This is a prelude to the move D2, D4. White wants to, as we know, play in the center and control the center. Do we have an updated move from Eswaran? Yes, knight F6, knight C3. So in this position, the most standard moves include knight C6 by black, symmetrical, or G7, G6. The idea here is to put the bishop on the long diagonal. Very, very typical. You mentioned the Grunfeld, but so typical of so many openings, including the English. Again, I think that for Irina to get an opening advantage, it'll be necessary for her to play D2, D4 in the near future.
Indeed, and I think we will see that from her as well.
All right. Shall we go to the open section?
Yeah, let's take a look at the battle that we saw in the playoffs last year. We saw Ramirez and Kamsky playing off last year, and that was super tight. And now we see them play again, and Gata Kamsky playing 1 E4.
Right.
And Ramirez playing the French.
French defense, E7, E6. Just a backdrop about Gata isn't a natural E2, E4 player, in my opinion, and although he plays E2, E4 often enough, he's really more at home with a queen pawn opening. When he plays E4, one of the defenses that he has a massive, massive score against, a very high winning percentage, is the French defense.
That's right.
He loves
used
to.
a novelty and you in that once, right?
No,
that was
a Caro.
I get them confused sometimes. Those light squared.
Yeah, exactly. So essaying the French defense against Gata is almost a no-no at the highest level. So I'm very surprised by Alejandro's opening choice, and I think it kind of threw Gata back a bit, the French defense. So now he's just kind of thinking about his main approach has been the winner, and he must be thinking, what has Alejandro Ramirez prepared for the mainline winner French, which I'll just put that on the board. Again, Gata has a huge plus, huge number of victories from this position as white, and he's probably thinking, what has Ramirez prepared?
Yeah, that's right. He's won a lot of nice games actually in the championship. I remember a couple against Varuzhinakovian.
Precisely. Those were classic model games by Gata. But Gata's still thinking about his second move.
And here's we have a little close-up of Gata Kamsky with all his vital stats. So living,
27-70.
yeah, just always the favorite here at the U.S. Championship since Hikaru doesn't play.
Exactly. Gata has been number 2 behind Hikaru for a number of years, and when Hikaru's absent, it's sort of like, okay, the door's wide open for Gata to win the event. But in this competition, remember last year he got out to that fantastic start. I think he won his first 4 games in a row. He's drawn the first game, so okay, at the moment he's not leading the event, let us say. Shall we switch to another game? What game would you like me to bring up, Jennifer?
Well, let's take a look at the youngsters, Shankland and Robson are playing, right?
Absolutely.
I think that'll be a really interesting game. Robson played quite well yesterday to win with the white pieces.
In a Russian defense, Petrov.
Right, and now he's playing the other side of it, but unlike Robson himself, Shankland chose the
conventional.
Exactly. Instead of playing that knight c3 move with the idea of castling queenside later in the game, which we saw Robson use to such devastating effect against Ehrenberg, Shankland's played more traditionally, which is d4 here.
Well, of course, these two players are playing in the U.S. Championship, and they're playing for the prestige of winning the national championship. There's something a little bit deeper to this game that's very important as well. Both of the young, great talents in the United States, but they're both fighting for a place on the U.S. Olympic team. The Olympiad will be held later this year in Tromsø, Norway, and they're fighting for that 5th position. So they're both hoping for a great result in this competition so that they'll clinch that 5th spot. And this game will be very important in that personal matchup of who's going to be our 5th board. So we've seen e4 by Sam, e5, knight f3, knight takes e5. These are all the most standard moves in the Russian defense. And let me just get that back up on my screen. Yes. I used to play the Petrov, and I actually had some very good results with it as black. But I lost one horrendous game to Anatoly Karpov. And it really put me off of the defense for a very, very long time. The standard mainline moves are castles by white, bishop e7, c4, knight b4. There are many, many alternatives, of course, to this whole line of play. But these are the moves that are the most common at the highest levels of world-class grandmasters.
Right, and what do you think about this compared to Robson's treatment yesterday? Which opening do you feel is more testing at the moment?
Well, I'm a bit surprised by Robson's choice. I think the Russian Petrov defense must have been a recent addition. He likes to play more Sicilians, and remember his match with Ben Feingold? That was really a wild affair with sharp opening play. So obviously his choice today of the Petrov is really, he's basically saying, I'm playing very solid, I'd be very satisfied with a draw.
And here we have a close-up of Ray Robson, who mentioned yesterday he loves playing aggressively. He's a veteran of this tournament. He's played 7 times, even though he's only 19 years old.
That is the truly stunning figure to me, that this 19-year-old young man could actually be a wily veteran in the field, having played 7 U.S. championships. It's just amazing that at 19 he's playing in his 7th event. Let me get an update on the game.
And we have Grandmaster Ashley with the matchup of the day so far.
Well, actually, I want to follow along your lines talking about Ray Robson. 7 U.S. championships. 7. He's only 19 years old. Simply incredible to be a vet at 19, a wily vet. And he showed it yesterday in a brilliant game against Sergei Ehrenberg. The finish was truly spectacular. In this moment, Ehrenberg had the move rook to e6 he should have played, but instead he played queen to g5, and that was all she wrote. Robson didn't give him a breathing chance after this. It was over. He played the move queen b4, a simple threat of checkmate, of course, with queen takes b7, and after b6, dealing with that mate, this move a4, making sure he had no back rank mates at all and preparing his attack to bring his rook down and just sweep all the way across. His opponent played c5, and after queen to b5, now this queen is just sneaking up into position, looking to go to a6. After this rook tried to get over, the queen did get there, and this blocking move did not help because after rook takes c7, it was impossible to capture back with the rook because of this nasty move, slam dunk, you're going to get mated, son. So he couldn't do that. He had to play king takes c7, but that king ended up just getting chased around the board, king to d6, gobbling more pawns, and after king d7, rook d1 check, his opponent had seen enough and decided to resign. So Robson definitely, don't give him something to hit. He punches hard, and so he's looking to do the same in this matchup against one of his youthful rivals. Back to you, Jen and Yaz.
I feel like I'd be more afraid of him in basketball than boxing, though.
He's actually very good in tennis.
Oh, that's the one.
Right. No.
I know he's supposed to be a good athlete.
He's very tall at 19. I remember him when he was a 17-year-old playing in the U.S. championships, and he was already my height. And now he's much taller than me. It's a miracle. You feed them and they grow. What can I say?
Eat your spinach.
Eat your spinach. So the players so far have played the main line as expected. Knight b4 is usually, I would say 9 times out of 10, knight b4 is the main line. Bishop drops back to avoid the trade. Castles, knight c3. And again, the theory, what we call the opening theory of this opening, goes for many, many moves from here. So still, the players should both be in their preparations.
That's right, and these two have a kind of history of playing interesting games, you know. In the U.S. Championship in 2010, there was a dragon, and one time Robson played the fantasy variation of the Caro-Kann.
I love that, yeah.
We tend to see interesting battles, well, and kind of not surprising, because these are two of the more dynamic and kind of promising players in the generation, so it's good to see them battle.
Without question. We all know who our favorites are in the tournament: Gata, Alex Onishuk, Gariev. But for my money, Sam is really one of those players who I wouldn't be surprised if he pulled an upset. He's been playing really, really well of late, and he just had this world-class result not so long ago. I was attracted to the game between Lendeman and Gariev because we've got a very unusual opening on our board that I brought up on my screen.
All right, so Lenderman and Gariev.
Both players
Both players are gone. Does this mean it's another draw? No, I don't think so. Maurice is about to have a heart attack. Yesterday, of course, Gariev. And you know, I think that honestly, Robson, it's easy to put your money on Robson as one of the most likely to challenge Gata this year because he started with a win.
Right.
It doesn't take a statistical genius to do that.
No.
But so Robson and Shankland, though, I think have really good chances compared to most other players to challenge for the title.
Absolutely.
Because you're not going to see them making 14-move draws
No.
with white pieces.
No,
No
no,
way.
no, no, no.
I just can't even imagine either of them doing that.
Exactly.
And on top of that, Robson's already got a running start. So.
And so has Alex Lenderman.
That's right.
Lenderman won his first round game.
That wasn't the same kind of style as Robson. He was more fortunate in that game. And
Yes.
kind of unfortunate for
Josh
Fortel, who blundered uncharacteristically.
Just at the very end of the time control. Today, Lenderman opened up with his queen pawn, Gariev, offering a Nimzo, which we see, a Nimzo defense, bishop b4. And now this has actually become a very theoretical position. f2, f3, Magnus Carlsen, queen c2, the classical, e2, e3, the Rubinstein variation. So the idea behind this move e2, e3 is that this knight on g1, it wants to go to e2, so in case of a trade of bishop for knight on c3, he'll be able to recapture with the knight without having double pawns. The great Akiba Rubinstein introduced this idea. b7, b6. From black's point of view, you see this bishop on c8, it's kind of buried behind this wall of pawns on d7 as well as e6. So black wants to put his bishop on this nice long diagonal. We call that the fianchettoing the bishop.
And that move order also stops white from having the best of both worlds, right? Like, white would love to, A, play the bishop on d3 and also play your knight on d to e2.
Right.
But now at least the pawn on g2 could be hanging, so that would be an extra thing for white to have to consider. Does he want to go for that variation with bishop takes g2 and disallowing castling, but something hanging on g7?
Exactly.
So if you don't play b6, though, perhaps white can just play bishop d3 and knight g2. And really, that knight is preferable on e2 than to f3.
Yes, especially in the fight for the e2, the e4 square. And knight
Exactly.
e2 was what Jennifer...
Because also of f3 as well, not just because of the knight defending, right?
Right. So what Jennifer was mentioning is that it's nice to have the bishop on d3. In the game, the move knight ge2 has been played, and then you might ask yourself, well, the bishop on
Right.
f1 has been blocked. So what Jennifer was saying is, why not develop the bishop first, and only on your next turn play the move knight g2? And what you had mentioned is that after bishop b7, with this threat of grabbing this pawn on g2, knight e2, bishop takes, rook here, bishop here, rook takes. You get a wild position where neither player is going to be castling kingside, and it's not to everybody's taste that these g-pawns have been traded so early in the game. It's a sharp line.
This would be fun,
This
but we're
could
not
be
going to
fun.
see it because knight ge2 immediately is played. Yeah.
Yes. So knight ge2, going with the Rubinstein
I guess we
idea.
don't really need to say knight ge2, huh?
No. Bishop b7, all of these moves are fairly standard. a2, a3. And this retreat, especially to the d6 square, that's a little bit, not a little bit, that is unusual. Standard moves include bishop takes, knight takes, and white can look forward to having the advantage of the two bishops in a very close position, as well as bishop e7, dropping back so that in the immediate future, black is playing for d7, d5 in a fight in the center. That was not Gariev's choice. He played bishop d6. And now we see this move d5, because white actually has a problem here. His problem is, how does he want to develop his bishop on f1? What Alex decided to do is, after d5, castles g3. He wanted to put his bishop on the long diagonal, also not only just protecting the pawn on d5, but his idea is to make black's bishop on b7 a very passive one. The game continued. a5, okay. At a certain moment, white might try to grab space on the queen side with the move b2, b4, but also from black's point of view, the move a5 sets up for knight a6 and a future knight c5. So all of these moves look very standard, and I'm expecting castles, of course. We haven't seen that move yet. But my approach to the position is, what on earth is this bishop doing on d6? After, for example, knight c5 looks very standard, e3, e4.
Well, I think it probably wants to go back to e7 and then back to d6 again, and then back to e7.
A repetition or something? I don't know.
Seems
about
reasonable.
That.
No, but I hear what you're saying. It's unorthodox play by Garayev, and we see that sometimes from him. So this will be an interesting one, and let's see what Grandmaster Ashley has to say about this game.
Well, yes, just like you, I was intrigued by the position. I was thinking, what kind of opening play is this? Putting your bishop on d6, it looks unusual, not being able to push the pawn to d5. So I decided to do some research on the position, and it turns out this position has been played a few times. Players are playing this unusual idea with the bishop on d6. The point is that it stops the knight from going to the g3 square. So this is the actual game position that we have here. And this exact position, I found a game, only one, back in 2012 between two players, Kramling and Gorovets. And the game proceeded in this unorthodox style. Black, with the bishop on d6, played the move e5, blocking the bishop on that square. And after this move, h3, really unusual plan in this position, something like e4 looks more natural. Black attacked the center on the other side with c6. The game proceeded with g4, a capture on d5, and after knight takes, the move e4, shutting in this bishop on this square. So black's bishop has been released, and now suddenly it's white's bishop that was in trouble. And after knight g3, the bishop exchanged this knight, and then exchanged the knight in the middle and play this move, knight to c5, suddenly threatening a monstrous knight d3 check. And after castles, the bishop leapt into action on this diagonal. And look at this position after two more moves, Yaz. You're not going to like this for white. The rook had to grovel back in the corner, and then a4 was played. Total domination of the queen side, pawn controlling there. This pawn will never move, and black went on to win this game, obviously, with this superlative position. So Garayev has no doubt this game on his mind, and it could continue with e5. Lenderman is walking into the line. What does he have planned to spring that's new on his esteemed opponent? Back to you, Jen and Yas.
Thank you.
When I think about the databases of the day, and you have a million games, and Marie said, well, he found one. That, to me, meant that the line is very uncommon. Just testing new territory, I meant to say, in this opening. Interestingly, Alexander played the move rook b1 instead of the more conventional move, I should say, castles. So with rook b1, what white's idea is if black tries to establish his knight on this wonderful outpost c5, white's immediately ready for b2, b4, takes, and kicking that knight away. So the idea of rook b1 is to prevent black's knight from finding a nice outpost. But on the other hand, this move rook b1 is a tempo. I can't imagine that as being the most useful tempo. I would say that after a move like c7, c6, attacking the pawn in the center, I don't see really too many problems with this position from black's point of view. At the moment, he's got all of his pieces developed, just ready to move his queen and connect the rooks. If white plays for e4, let's see, c6 takes, and again, I'm just checking whether or not I can do something about. I don't see if I can. I'm trying to figure out a way of snabbling that pawn on d5. I'm looking at a line that might go something like bishop e5 and knight c7. But it does appear to me that White has enough defenders to maintain that pawn on d5. If he can maintain the pawn on d5, White will come out of the opening with an advantage. But a key battle, I should say, is happening around the d5 pawn.
Yeah, very interesting strategical battle we'll see here. Not so typical.
Not at all. And let's. What other games would you like me to?
Well, let's take a look
see
back at the
next?
women's championship. I think we have a couple of interesting matchups going on there. Like Zitansky is playing against Tata Abrahamian.
All right.
So one of our leaders in the women's championship, Tata Abrahamian, playing against four-time champion Anna Zitansky. So this traditionally is a battle which really sets up the championship. Who's more likely to contest the only grandmaster in the field, Irina Krash?
Exactly. If there's a winner in this game, then the winner of this game becomes Irina's key rival.
Exactly.
Shall we see how
and this looks like it was an interesting opening.
A French defense. Looks like another French defense, I think.
That's right, and that's
There we go.
a big mainstay of Tatev Abrahamian.
Yes. So we see the advanced French defense. When I played the French defense, I was always happy when my opponent played the advance. I thought that gave me a chance for a really quick counter strike against White's d4 pawn. And let's see how it indeed. c5 attacking the pawn, c3. All very standard moves so far.
It makes sense that French players would be happy because it's kind of like the traditional setup that you're going for. The closed position, the nice grind where your king is safe because they're in open lines.
And the quick initiative that black gets by putting this pawn on d4 under pressure from the queen, from this knight, and very often this knight will actually jump to the f5 square as well. So White's idea is that if she can maintain her center, she'll have an advantage, but in the meanwhile, she has to play some defensive moves.
That's right. I mean, obviously, I would prefer with White to play bishop d3 castle and be able to develop all my pieces that have a very nice position because castling is kind of difficult for black with the bishop on d3. It's going to always give a ready-made attack to White.
You can't castle kingside because of the bishop sacrifice, bishop
right.
h7.
But the problem is it's just not so easy to hold on to the d4 pawn. So this is really a battle of the d4 pawn. And even these small moves like a3 are related to that battle.
Right. The idea behind the move a2, a3 is White would like to force black to resolve the tension and to capture this pawn on d4. And one of the ways that White can do that is by playing for the move b2, b4. Very, very interesting battles occur after c5, c4, and black tries to take advantage of the square b3 because of the pawn no longer being on a2. But
normally we wouldn't play c4 and release all the attention on the d4 pawn, but now it feels justifiable because you made that weakness.
Exactly.
And kind of similar to what we sometimes see in another favored opening of the championship players, Gata Kamsky, is he plays the a6 Slav, and that's when you start seeing White play c5 sometimes.
Exactly. Very similar setups. So a3, bishop d7, this is quite, again, all very theoretical. b4 takes, rook c8. Notice that the rook immediately goes to the open c file, rook c8. Good things happening there. Bishop e3. White again re-fortifies her d4 pawn. Knight h6. This is a rather challenging move as it asks White, would you like to capture my knight and double the h-pawns? I actually never really worried about the doubled h-pawn because of future bishop g7, f6, chipping away at black's center. But for classical players, that capture bishop takes h6 would be very attractive.
That's right. I mean, I've always kind of found this position like not so fun for White.
Not so fun for White. Yeah. Well, to capture the knight, you mean?
In general, the advanced, it feels like something I always wanted to look at, but then positions I always found to be a little bit easier to play for black.
Interesting.
So I think that you have to be a really strong player to play these well for white, whereas black's moves seem to come a little bit easier, but maybe that's just, I lost my d pawn too many times.
Okay.
With that in mind, let's,
Bishop
or the
D3.
c4 square rather. With that in mind, let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be
Sure.
back for more from the chess capital of America. And welcome back to the St. Louis Chess Club here in the beautiful Central West End. We've got lots of action today. We're just talking about lost D-pawns. Another fun thing that we have going on this week in St. Louis is over at the World Chess Hall of Fame yesterday, two great new shows just opened.
Oh, it's wonderful.
And one is Cage and Kino, which explores the music of the composer John Cage and also the contemporary artist Glenn Kino from LA. He has a lot of pieces related to chess and art. And we have with Grandmaster Maurice Ashley, the curator of that show, who I've also had the pleasure of working with in the past. And he is just a real incredible mind. And we're lucky that he's managed to devote a lot of his art expertise to chess. So with no further ado, Maurice Ashley and Larry List.
Thanks, Jen. Larry, welcome to our show.
Always a pleasure to be in St. Louis.
So indeed, you have opened, you must be excited. The show's opened yesterday, and
yesterday we were excited, and today we're all relieved and really happy.
And you're used to doing a lot of these shows. All your curation have to do with chess masterpieces. You've done them all over the world, as a matter of fact. Tell us about the show that's at the museum.
Yeah. Well, what's exciting about it is that chess is sort of a sport driven by the geniuses that we see in competition here. But another important ongoing aspect of it is that chess is a magnet and draws out from all of the world a wonderful community of people, enthusiasts, scholars, and the show across the street focuses on projects that artists made specifically to get other people involved in chess, to do these performances where other people all sort of have input and share in creating, an artistic experience based on chess.
So I tried to trick you earlier. I said, which is the best piece? And you say, oh, there's no best pieces. Do you have a favorite, though, that's there?
I really don't, because something that makes the show good is that they're related because they're chess, they're related because they each sort of use performance and include other people, but other than that, they are so different. And so it's like going to two different kinds of fine restaurants with fabulous cuisine, and so they're two different experiences to savor. I mean, one is electronic music created sort of in performance, and the other sort of, that will be happening. We'll have a live performance next Thursday night of the John Cage reunion piece. And then in August, during the Singfield Cup, Glenn Kino will return, and we will do a performance of his Burning Boards, where we'll have 32 chess players, combination of grandmasters, art scholars, interested amateurs, all playing chess in a small room on 16 boards using burning candles as their chess pieces.
Incredible. I've heard about this from Jennifer Shahadi, and she said that it was difficult to play when the pieces are the candles are burning down.
Yes.
You're trying to make sure you
Yes.
move those pieces.
Well, it kind of demonstrates the durability of chess as a construct, because it transforms it from being this thing of like you versus me to, at a certain point, we begin to share this common problem, which is I can't move this piece. I can't identify this piece. I just burned off my sleeve with my piece. And so it kind of enables it to unfold into a whole other sort of shared experience. And then beyond that, the experience for everyone who is watching the show of this incredible spectacle. So I hope that you're going to be on hand and will be a participant. That would be terrific, Maurice.
I think I will be back for that, for the Sinkfield Cup, for
Good,
sure.
good.
Tell us some other interesting themes. We saw a Queen Within happen here as well
Yes.
last year. A
Yes.
gala for that, which really played off the idea of the queen inside of every woman.
Yes.
What other themes have you explored doing this art?
Well, in the sum total of all the different shows that I've done, what keeps emerging is that chess is this template that every different society uses to paint a portrait of itself, and how the pieces are represented or changed or altered reflects the culture that made them and the time frame that they were made in. And so that's something that when you're looking at chess sets, sort of, you're also sort of looking at cultural history. And then the notion of the chessboard grid comes from a very ancient Ashtapada, which was a mandala, a Hindu mandala that was used as the basis for organizing homes, sacred spaces, temples, and entire cities. And so embedded in chess is this most universal of templates, and that's why it is always fascinating and it's always changing.
Always evergreen, always interesting.
Yes.
Fascinating is indeed the word. Larry, thanks so much for sharing your insights with us.
Always a pleasure to be in St. Louis.
Indeed, and you should definitely check out the World Chess Hall of Fame just next door from here, where we are doing our commentary. Really, truly original stuff for all chess fans. Back to you, Jen and Yas.
Thank you, Larry and Maurice. I love that line, embedded in chess is universal templates, although I think I missed a word or two there. But
The manual.
it's really great to see this art happening, and so much going on in St. Louis that you can experience in person. I know it's fun watching us at home from the comfort of your couch or your laptop, but I really do encourage you to at least come out at some point. Because, you know, there's the museum, there's the chess club, and there's also live commentary right next door at Leicester.
Absolutely.
Which is pretty fun, and that's hosted by Grandmasters Robert Hess and Ben Feingold.
Ben will join us in a wee bit. I like the performing chess arts and the candles. I'm going to be one of the people in that exhibit.
Short sleeves, man.
Yeah,
Sleeves.
definitely.
I'm so clumsy. Like, I'm the
Definitely.
worst. You know, it's funny having Larry talk about common problems. So that means that if I'm getting checkmated and something's in fire, like one is more important than the other.
My king's melted, so I can't defend my king. But one
Yeah.
of the exhibits over there that I enjoyed was the musical chess set.
That's
so
right.
the idea is you make a move, it produces a note.
Yeah.
And each piece produces different notes. And I was playing over the game of Paul Morphy, Paris Opera House, and it was rather very harmonic, the music that was created. It was kind of cool.
Brilliant idea. I mean,
Yeah.
I love that. I actually participated in a recreation of that in Toronto as well. And that's a recreation of the Marcel Duchamp, John Cage match where they did that. So music and chess.
It fits.
We got Melekina playing against Foyger here, and Foyger played a really nice game yesterday with the white pieces, winning. Melekina, not so fortunate, playing against one of the strongest players in the field, lost to Tatev Abrahamian.
Exactly.
So this will be a really critical match to see if Foyger can string together some good chess here. Now it looks like we have a repeat opening.
Exactly.
We've got Foyger this time on the black side of the advanced range.
And instead of the early queen b6 that we saw in the game of Zatansky, bishop d7, bishop d3, and again queen b6, immediately putting pressure on the d4 pawn. This is a known sacrifice, takes, knight takes. The move I'm more familiar with is knight takes d4. That wasn't white's choice. White played knight bd2, and this move actually is kind of not so typical. Knight f5, retreating.
I think knight bd2 has become more popular. I believe Ben Feingold has played that in some blitz games as well. I remember
Really?
I remember talking to him about that move once. He says it really confuses people.
Yes.
And of course, like I saw a really great. Alyssa sent me a game recently that I posted on the U.S. Chess Federation website from her game in Philadelphia Open, in which she did quite well, and it was a really brilliant attacking game with the C3 Sicilian.
Right.
So it's interesting because she doesn't have like a ton of time to study chess, so it's hard for her to play all of the main lines, but she still wants to attack.
Of course.
And that's always a difficult situation to be in as a player, because generally the attacking lines are also the most theoretical.
Right.
So she's kind of finding the C3 Sicilian and things that aren't super theory-based, but also give her a chance to try to go for the king.
Exactly, and she wants to play attacking games. That's what you do. You got to sacrifice, open up lines. But in this position, when you take a look at the position, you see all of these black pieces still on the back row. You think to yourself, well, let's get them into the game. And instead of that retreating knight move, knight f5, which was played, my first instinct would be, let's get the troops out and play knight e7. Again, that was not played. Instead, this retreating move, knight f5. And I'm thinking after a move, for example, like knight b3, idea of g4, bishop e3, bishop e3, white's going to have a very promising initiative for the sacrifice d4 pawn, the pawn that you used to lose all the time.
Well, sometimes it's good to lose it, I suppose.
Exactly.
So let's hear from Grandmaster Maurice Ashley on this. And by the way, we're also going to get Ben Feingold, so maybe Maurice will get a chance to ask Feingold himself about this line.
Exactly.
Indeed, it looks as though the French structure is in fashion this round. A lot of boards we see it. The one you're mentioning right now is between Melikina and Feuser. And you see here, the computer wants to even play bishop takes f5, takes, and then knight b3 as with the same idea of bringing the bishop to e3, controlling the structure. It thinks that in this position, white would be slightly better. We also have the same thing happening in Kamsky versus Ramirez. Look at that knight on the side of the board. You know, we tell our students, put our knights in the center, and there go the knights on the side. The better players understand what happens when a knight goes here. It's certainly rerouting itself to the middle so that it can attack the d4 pawn. So that's an interesting position. But also, another French position is the one between the Zatonsky and Abrahamian. This position, the black player has played the move g6, has Tatev, and this line is really fascinating. Knight g5 looks like it's on tap, but actually this move is already losing, cold, incredibly so. After this move, bishop over to h6. If you go for the fork with knight takes, bishop takes check, king over, and then simply queen takes d4, cool, calm, giving you this rook, looking at your rook as well. And believe it or not, the best move after knight takes is to play knight takes e5. Chaos on the chessboard. This knight is trapped, that rook is hanging, this bishop is hanging. Black is just saying yum yum in that position. But also a fourth position with that structure in the game between Molnar and Akobian, except in this one it was a Caro-Kann. You see the difference. The bishop is outside of the pawn formation, but look at the pawns already steaming down the board. So French structure on the board in this one, this second round of the U.S. Championship in quite a few games. Really exciting stuff looking to happen here already, just starting out in round 2 of the championships. Back to you, Jen and Yaz.
Wow. I pulled up a game between Mac and VAR, and just the very same game that Maurice had finished his commentary with. And I'm looking at this. Check this out. Check this out, Jen. The last move, the last two moves, we've seen white play g4 followed by f4 with the idea of f4, f5, trapping this bishop on g6. f4, guess what black played? c4, ignoring the threat.
Wow.
Like, why can't we play f5? Winning the bishop. Now we know VAR is well prepared. He has a second from Armenia, Gabriel Sargsyan, one of the world-class grandmasters for many-time Olympic champion team of Armenia.
And they've been friends since they've been about 7.
Exactly.
They said that they used to play sports and chess along with Levana Ronian.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I think VAR is very well prepared, and obviously the move F4, F5 is well telegraphed in advance. But can we do some crazy sacrifices like knight takes E5? It's actually a 2-piece sacrifice that I want to try to pull off. I want to sacrifice a knight and a bishop. The idea from Black's point of view is he's got his rook in the game, but is it enough, Jen? I'm having troubles believing this.
So you just want to play Queen H4 now?
Or Rook H2. I'm not sure if it's Queen H4 or Rook H2.
Even
but look
Knight
at all,
F3, yeah.
look at all of these defensive resources White has in the position. I can't imagine that this is worth 2 pieces.
Yeah, seems pretty unlikely.
So do we have another? Do you have a suggestion for me after
C4? So C4 is on the board, huh?
Yes.
So after F5, let's see.
I've got C4 on my board. F4, F5. I don't get it. You might have
Trying to play like Bishop G5 and then Bishop E3 check in Queen H4.
Okay, let's give that a. It's not. It looks like we have a wrong inputted move.
Maybe
on
C
our
takes
board.
D4 instead.
No.
Perhaps
C4.
there was no C4. Maybe there was like some kind of DGT error where instead he played C takes D4. We'll find out.
Yes. So that was like that would have been a shock. Like F4, F5, winning the piece. That can't be. Okay. So we think we have a glitch in that game. Shall we go to our game of Gata Kamsky's game?
Let's
right
look
away?
at Kamsky Ramirez. You know, you mentioned Ramirez opening choice, and I took a look at some previous battles by these guys. I haven't played that many times, but remember last year they were involved in that
Marathon
epic playoff, right?
Yeah.
And usually Ramirez just chose the Roy Lopez against Kamsky.
Exactly.
So an opening that Kamsky is also an expert in, but super solid. And so it's interesting that he deviated from that. In fact, in their classical game last year, that was the opening as well. Ramirez ended up playing a line of the Roy, and Kamsky played a 63 line, and it was an anti-martial type thing.
Right. A 63 line?
It looked like it. Yeah, he actually didn't play the main lines, but he played like D3 and then followed it up with A4.
Okay.
So I think it might have transposed to some, like the A4 anti-martial type looking stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He played the quiet.
Exactly. And I think he got a pretty decent position with Black as well.
He did. He did. Gata was having difficulties getting an advantage in that game. He did play the French today, and knight F3. And instead of the moves, we've seen in this round already the move Queen B6, which is by far the most popular standard move. We've seen the move Bishop D7, and Alejandro played knight H6. So the idea behind Alejandro's move, knight H6, is again, he's looking to play quickly knight on H6 to F5 to put pressure on this pawn on D4. And now we see tit for tat, knight A3. So what Gata is anticipating is that he'll be able to put his knight on C2, offsetting the knight coming to F5. We have a trade, and we have this position on our board.
So both bishops can double the other player's pawns. Of course, doubling the H pawns would traditionally seem to be more appealing because they're on the king side, right?
Precisely.
Doubling queen side pawns is really no big deal, right? It gives you an open file and it takes off a bishop. The only nice thing about it is really that C4 square, which I know French players are quite fond of, aren't they?
You got to get something. So here the question is, should for example, I'll just put a variation on the board where we do see the doubled A pawns, and again, not a big deal from White's point of view. He's not putting his king on the queen side. Double king side pawns are more of a big deal. But with this move, knight F5, again, White is going to be asked, how do you want to defend the pawn on D4? And probably he's going Gata, is going to have to play a move like bishop c3. I would think that Gata would not want to allow queen a5 check. For example, after bishop e3, queen a5 check, I think that's playing into black's hands. He's ready to snap a pawn over here. So after a move like bishop c3, are you inspired by white's position? Do you think he has much here? I think that Alejandro's opening...
He's got two bishops, but
yeah,
in a very close position.
And that dark square bishop is no great shakes. So for example, let's say I play a move like knight h4, just giving you the pure advantage of the two bishops against bishop and knight. I kind of think that this bishop on c3 is not going to be a very effective one in these types of structures.
But at least I get my bishop on d3, which is always kind of a nice thing in the French, to get an uncontested bishop there with the pawn on e5.
But how are you getting it to d3 uncontested? At the moment, you have a pawn on g2.
Right, okay. So you're saying that if I take on h4 and play bishop d3, you still can't take immediately, but I guess it's going to be super weak, huh? After bishop d7.
Right. One day I'm going to cause you to make a move that has to defend that pawn.
Well, the problem is the queen on h4 is just super active also.
Yeah.
That's a little bit annoying. It's like a really good piece.
I think Alejandro will be pleased with the outcome of this specific
Knight h4
position.
is a really cool move. Can we go back and see?
Sure. Maybe white needed to do something.
Have you ever played the French before? You just like knight h4, hitting d4, trying to grab my pawns. The problem in this case is, like, unlike Alyssa's position, there's so many minor pieces that have been traded for white that it's hard to justify sacrificing a pawn.
Exactly. So this is the game position, c takes d4. This is the game position, and we were just looking at this fantasy line with bishop b4. I always like checking my opponents. I feeling good about checking, but do it when it's good.
Check when it's good. That's
some
pretty excellent advice there.
Well, thank you very much.
Everybody's gained 100 rating points.
Yes.
Always look at checks. That's important.
Exactly. So again, this was the line that we were looking at, was this kind of a funny little stutter step. We're first drawing the bishop to the d2
Love
square.
It. Nice little finesse, yeah.
So that we can cause the defensive move.
But bishop c3, I mean, knight h4 is really the star move in my opinion. I like that move because if you don't play that, then
white has that nice bishop d3.
And then when you play knight h4, we can just castle immediately.
And you're fine.
So that after knight f3, queen f3, we get a little bit more play. Although even then, d4 could be tender.
Yeah, but without the queen on h4, it's not as good for black. But you're right. I like this
losing a
move.
lot of tempi, yeah.
Yeah,
That's why it's a really cool move order. Kind of similar to what we were talking about in another game where we said we wanted to play bishop d3 and knight e2. It's like our g2 pawn is an issue. If you make all these luxurious opening moves and try to get your pieces to the perfect square, suddenly you're like, wait a second, I forgot to castle.
Oh, hate that.
We got Grandmaster Ashley with some thoughts on another game.
Indeed, Jen, thanks. Take a look at this position, which may have blown up a little bit. Not sure, though, because it seems like white is able to win a piece, but black's going to get a busload of pawns for it. In the game, remember, Yaz, you were mentioning that this f5 threat is on tap. Well, black has allowed it. In this moment, white can go after the piece with the move f5. Black is captured on the d4 square, so he's got one pawn in his pocket. He could play the move d takes c3, among others as well. And it looks like black, well, let me turn this off so we can back up a second, because it looks like white decided not to go for the piece. After the move f5, then takes on c3, takes back on c3, and this bishop is going to go. But after queen b6 check, king to h1, and then knight takes e5, saying, you can have my piece, because after this trade, I've got count them, three pawns for the piece. What's worth it? I got a rook on the h-file. Your king's a little unclear, but maybe the attack is not going to land. But white's pawn structure looks terrible. In fact, you can't even call it a structure as you look at it. It's just scraggly pawns everywhere. So it looks as though Mulder decided, you know, I'm really not interested in that kind of position. So I'm just going to take back and repeat the threat of f5. So, you know, this is what happens in chess quite a bit. A moment happens, all the excitement, and then the guy says, I'm going to wait till later. Back to you, Jen and Yaz.
Well, I love the Caro-Kann, and it's nice to see VAR playing the Caro-Kann. Very sharp position there with that piece sacrifice that, you always have to analyze those opportunities when you have them to win a bishop, your opponent's bishop. In this game, I was a bit surprised that Mac really recaptured very quickly on d4. Obviously, Black would get great compensation, but after the recapture, there was that move Queen b6 once again.
Let's pull it up on your board as well.
Okay, sure. It's a sharp position for sure, but having a lot of experience on the Black side of the Caro-Kann.
Well, Grecian used to almost always play the French,
The
right?
French defense,
But
yes.
then he realized, he had to kind of add something additionally, so it wasn't too easy to prepare for, right?
Exactly. You got to mix it up, so to speak. You have to have different offenses and defenses. You can't just always run the ball. After c takes d4, what White wants to do in this position, obviously, I'll repeat myself, is to trap that bishop. The difference is that now, after this quick Queen b6, again, we've been talking about attacking d4 pawn the whole day. If White made a move, for argument's sake, like knight f3, well, first of all, you're no longer threatening f4, f5, winning the piece. And secondly, you are giving Black the opportunity to put his bishop in the middle of the board with bishop e4. So I think that that piece sacrifice, which it's easy to dismiss. It is 3 pawns. I'm with Maurice 100% on that. That's great compensation. But on the other hand, one of the things that we have to look at is the fact that White has opportunities here of still opening up the position more and opening up his position he would like for his bishop. So let me just put a move on the board, kind of a move that I would like to see if I were White. Let's say I play a move like knight d3, offering a 4th pawn. So let's just say knight takes d3, bishop takes d3, queen c7, threat of checkmate in one move, as well as queen takes c3. This is the type of position where the bishops could become very powerful once his bishop gets on b2 and this bishop on d3 goes to g6. So because we know Mac is such an aggressive player, he'd have sacrificed a piece, sacrificed 3 pawns for a piece, and had achieved a wild position.
I'm rooting for this to happen on the board.
It's not, because he recaptured so quickly on d4. It's dope. Hate that. By the way, in the game between Kamsky and Ramirez, we did see that move bishop b3, bishop b4 check. We had been looking at that move.
So you were looking at bishop b4 check followed by bishop takes a3.
Precisely.
But instead, Ramirez just played queen to a5.
Very normal move to put a little bit more pressure on that d2.
Although don't try bishop takes a3 now.
Don't do it. Don't do it. You won't like the results.
It's not going to be possible. Okay, so.
One of the things that I think, one of the great strengths of Gata, Kamsky, in my opinion, is his extraordinarily high level of technique. Now, in this position, the only reason why I would say White has an advantage, but the only reason why I don't say he has a decisive advantage, because after bishop d3, all of White's pieces are working and he's got pressing in the center. I think there is this move knight g4 with the idea of going after that f2 pawn and recentralizing to the e4 square that causes White to lose a tempo, dropping his king back, and then maybe with the move f7,
more than
f6.
one tempo, because we also disconnected our rooks now.
Exactly. So very, very close to having a decisive advantage, a big advantage for White in this ending, but I think knight g4
saves the day.
Saves the day.
So some very important finesses here based in development. Those of you watching at home, we encourage you to send us questions and comments rather at comments at stlouischessclub.org. And you can also use the hashtag US Chess Champs to send us your comments. We actually have some prizes today on offer. So
wonderful.
we've got some chess.com memberships for the best questions and comments. So be sure to make them good and come up with some good ones. And also, before we go to break, we have another position from Bobby Fischer's historic victory 50 years ago, where he swept the table. He went 11-0. And we still have that Bobby Fischer $64,000 prize on offer. So
For anyone who can repeat his feat.
for right now, try to repeat a little piece of his feat at home and solve the following position. It's a white to move, and it's really an interesting one because he's playing against a St. Louis legend, actually, in this game, Steinmeier. And we'll give you the answer and a little bit more on his opponent right after the break. welcome back to the 2014 U.S. Championships and U.S. Women's Chess Championships. I hope you enjoyed that Fischer diagram from his slashing 1963/4 victory. And
Right.
using those slashes.
50 years.
Yeah, that position was actually played against St. Louis legend Robert Steinmeier, and the correct move for white is knight to e5. I always tell my students that, when you're starting out, you really want to always look at captures and checks and checkmate threats. The stronger you get, the more any move that threatens anything should be on your menu, right?
Right.
Because those are important forcing moves that can win victory. A little bit about Steinmeier. The World Chess Hall of Fame website describes him. From the 1940s to the 70s, Robert Steinmeier was Missouri's premier chess talent, consistently winning the St. Louis District Championship. And during that time, St. Louis repeatedly drew grandmasters to the city for simultaneous exhibitions. So Steinmeier, definitely a St. Louis legend. And we've got more on that position and that solution with Maurice.
Indeed, some solutions you look at, you say, okay, that's it, it's over. This one is not like that, and just showed how deep Bobby Fischer was when he won his championship. He did play, indeed, the move knight to e5, and that, of course, threatens a simple fork, winning an exchange, right? So you get a pawn and the exchange. However, he opened himself up to a fork with this move, and in this position, Steinmeier played the move knight takes f2. Looks like tit for tat, right? What are you going to do? Whatever you can do, I can do better. What he didn't realize was that after rook d to f1, he was in severe trouble. The knight is now pinned, so it can't capture anything, and black can play the move queen takes g3. He actually resigned here, but he could have played on queen takes and now rook takes on f2. And the point being that this pawn is now under threat and cannot be defended. Well, you may say, well, he already got a pawn, so why don't I just give him, black got a pawn, just give white a pawn back. It's not that easy because suddenly the queen is trapped with the move rook to f3, and that's it, which means you cannot save this pawn or the exchange that's about to be collected. So Steinmeier, deeply looking at that, said, I'm playing against Bobby Fischer. This game is over, and tossed in the towel. So definitely a subtle win, deep win that Fischer pulled off in his epic run to going 11-0 in the championships. Back to you, Jen and Yaz.
And we still have a couple players in the running for that Fischer Prize. So, as Maurice pointed out, not every win by Bobby Fischer was rook f6, slash, and crush, right?
Right.
Some of them were more positional, some of them quieter, some of them even lucky, but ultimately 11 points.
Absolutely. I'm fascinated by the battle between Irina Krush and her young 13-year-old opponent. And the game that I'm looking at, the position I'm looking at, it's a hedgehog with a trade of knights, and I think the 13-year-old is doing pretty well. I'm really impressed. At the moment, if Irina's planning on winning this type of position, she may have to do it by playing a move like f4, which does expose your king a bit. So if she's going to go all out for victory, she's going to have to risk a little bit herself.
She will. Irina likes these types of, even though she's a d4 player, she likes the attack even when it's a little bit loosening.
Mm-hmm.
She's very aggressive and she's always playing for the win. So my money's on that move f4 being played and not too far away from now.
Okay.
Speaking of aggressive 1d4 players, we've got Grandmaster Ben Feingold taking a little break from his live commentary next door at the Sports Bar Leicester, and he is with Grandmaster Maurice Ashley.
Indeed, welcome Grandmaster Ben Feingold to our broadcast. Ben, you've been watching these games at Leicester Sports Bar. Must be hard trying to give commentary with all that delicious food.
Well, okay, it brings the spectators in though, Maurice, so that's good.
Indeed,
yeah,
for
the
sure.
food's great and the games are great today as well. The ones we were interested in mainly, Molnar-Akobian. When Molnar played knight e1 about 4 or 5 moves ago, I was asking my co-commentator, Robert Hess, in this position. I was asking my co-commentator, Robert Hess, where's that knight going to go? Is it going to go to c2 to e3 or d3 to f4? And actually there was a different reason which Robert Hess had picked up on, and that is after c5, that now the knight is no longer blocking the f-pawn, and white can start charging down the king's side, and he did just that, playing g4, attacking the bishop, and f4. And, well, this probably scared Yaz in more ways than one, because Yasser likes to play the Caro-Kann with black, but of course, white is not only opening up his king, but really trying to trap that bishop on g6. And by retreating the knight, which looks passive, it makes way for the f-pawn to go up the board. And now this is dangerous for Akobian. He might have trouble saving his bishop.
Indeed, we were interested in that position. Let's go to another game you said you were interested in, the game between Krush and Eswaran. We saw the youngster win a fine game yesterday. Looks like she has some spatial issues, though, in this game.
Right, and I annotated that game for the website because that was just an amazing game. And I saw you tweeted about it also. That was, for a first time in the U.S. Championship, winning with the black pieces in such an amazing game, and now playing the perennial champion, tied
With
for
black
first.
Again, by the way,
Black the
unfortunately.
first two rounds in the U.S. Championship.
What are they
wow.
doing to the 13-year-old?
Yeah, and we didn't like what Black was doing this game. We really liked Krush's opening choice, slow, methodical, get a slight advantage, and try to plot along. And I didn't like this bishop f6 move that was played in this position, because the d6 pawn is always the weakness here. And bishop f6 has a temporary threat of knight f3 check, which obviously Irina's going to see, winning the white queen. But then 2 moves later, we see the weakness of the d pawn. Now we see the weakness of the b pawn. And I think Black is in a little trouble now. I think Irina has a really nice position.
Indeed, that's going to be some trouble trying to save her in that position. What did you think about this game between Lenderman and Gurayev? That game had a strange opening, and in the position now looks quite
right.
unusual.
In fact, I haven't looked at this in 4 or 5 moves, and this is actually exactly what we predicted would happen, that white would sacrifice a pawn and then get this brilliant attacking position. And the grandmasters in the commentary room were very scared to have the black pieces. We didn't want to face these pieces against our king and the brilliant white center, so we thought white had more than enough compensation, and we were a bit worried for black's position.
Indeed. Yesterday, though, we saw this player play with white as well, throwing away, Gurayev played with black, playing with white. He threw away a draw against Kamsky. What kind of effect could losing today have?
That's an unusual decision, having the white pieces and having a little advantage and taking a draw quickly. Now when you lose with black, if that does happen, that really bites you, because you're like, I threw away a white pieces. Now I'm losing to one of the lower rated players with black, and you sort of think like, wow, with white I really should have tried harder. So if Gurayev loses this game, I think it'll be really tough psychologically.
Indeed. Any other games of interest before we let you go?
Well, one of the interesting games was the Zatonsky-Abrahamian game. They've played many times. They're usually fighting for one of the top 3 spots. And, well, Anna plays everything with white, and she doesn't know, e4, d4, knight f3, and she played e4. Tatev always plays the French defense, and they played all these theoretical moves pretty quickly. And Tatev played sort of a sideline, which we thought would give white a good position. It's really hard for black to get her bishops going. So we thought white had a nice space advantage, and we thought advantage Anna for opening choice, because it looks like she's doing pretty well with the white pieces. And this, we think, is a key game for the final standings. Irina's having her usual winning a lot of games, and usually Anna and Tatev are, Krush. And usually Anna and Tatev are the ones fighting for first with her, and they're playing pretty early on. And we have a very interesting opening, but I think advantage Anna right now.
Indeed. So really interesting games heating up. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Feingold, Grandmaster Ben Feingold, doing commentary with Robert Hess over at Lester's. When you're not enjoying us online, you can go and enjoy some food and really fine commentary with the Grandmasters. Thanks very much, Ben, and we'll send you back to work.
Thanks, Maurice.
Back to you, Jen and Yaz.
That's right. It's a fantastic deal to be here a member at the St. Louis Chess Club. In fact, that's actually free. You have to pay if you're not a member, but if you're a year membership, you get all those annotations and free food.
And
we keep mentioning free food.
Yeah.
We know our audience. Come
We
on,
know
guys.
our audience, yes.
But yeah, so just become a member and show your support. We've got over 1,000 members here at the St. Louis Chess Club.
And growing,
Which is just incredible, but we'd like to see it reach the next milestone, 10,000.
Yes, that would be a nice
I guess
milestone.
I'm skipping a couple milestones.
Well, we'll go for 5 first. Also, one of the things that really is a nice thing here in the St. Louis Chess Club is when we do get all of these grandmasters doing their lectures, they are captured digitally, recorded, and you can view them at YouTube and just go through for the St. Louis Chess Club lectures, and you can get all of these Grandmaster lectures on openings, middle games, tactics, how to become a stronger player, how to train yourself. So
yeah,
it's great.
You and I both have a bunch of them cataloged there. And for anyone who's listening who's kind of new to chess, first of all, welcome. We love that you're here because we know that some of the things we're saying you might not understand. But first of all, feel free to ask questions. We don't think there's any dumb questions, right?
No.
So don't worry about asking a silly question, the hashtag US Chess Champs. We're thrilled to have you. And also, I should point out that Yasser Seirawan has some basic training videos as well, don't you?
Oh yes, definitely. Also on the site, sure.
So if you're confused by en passant,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. You know, the
There-
funny thing about en passant is even though it doesn't really occur that often, it completely changes chess. Like if it weren't for en passant, the game would be so different, right? It would be much more static.
Yes, because you could block your opponent. I remember this great story of Arnold Denker. Arnold Denker was U.S. champion playing in Manhattan, and a very wealthy banker had come to the Manhattan Chess Club and challenged Arnie to a 5-minute game. And they played, and Arnie made an en passant, and the banker glared at him like, because he didn't know the rule, right? And he thought, so that's what it takes to be a U.S. champion. You have to cheat to beat me. And he left in a huff and never returned. Quite a story.
Yeah, can I do en passant here? It's kind of like the kid version of Are We There Yet? Can I do en passant here? Can I do en passant here?
Right.
Eventually the answer is yes. And we've got more from Grandmaster Maurice Ashley.
Well, this is not an en passant or any funky rules. The problem right now is just the U.S. women's champion showing her power against the rookie. Unfortunately for Shairawan, it looks like she's in big trouble. In this opening, which was played very solidly, as Ben Feingold mentioned, by White, Shairawan played the move knight fd7. When I first saw this, I said, well, that's very unusual in this setup. Usually you don't see a move like that. She was worried about the move e5, attacking her knight and discovering an attack on the bishop. That's something to worry about, but there are other ways to deal with it. For example, defending with queen c8 would have been one idea. Instead, she played this move, and White just calmly developed, played b3, did nothing special here, and after knight c6, just very slow, allowing this exchange, and then this was the moment. Bishop f6, of course, threatening to move the knight out of the way with check and winning the queen, but the queen just simply dropped back, and there was no worries there. And after the move a6, rook a d1, and suddenly the d-pawn is under threat, and Black had to retreat, which certainly made bishop f6 look a little bit random, in fact. And now the move f4, chasing the knight, and now the move queen to f2 on the board. Very subtle, this maneuver. The queen drops back, pawn goes to f4, now the queen in f2. And what do you do about the b6 pawn? It looks like it's going to go lost. The youngster is in deep trouble against the reigning champion. She's got her work cut out for her to try to save this position. And as you see there, she realizes that this one is really difficult. Back to you, Jen and Yaz.
And this is what happens in the hedgehog when you play the hedgehog and you misplace your pieces. And with that pawn on b6, under attack and almost impossible to guard, I agree with Maurice. It's looking bad for the youngster. The only move I can really imagine Black trying to play here is b5. White could go for this capture and win a pawn, very nice, and put pressure on the pawn on d6 as well. But maybe the real problem with b5 may be this advanced c4, c5 going after this pawn on d6. That also looks like it's going to give White a nice advantage. What's your thought, Jen? Would you just go ahead and grab this pawn and be satisfied that you're a pawn ahead, this type of position, or you would try to milk the position even further with c4, c5?
Well, let's take a look at c5. Sure.
Once more, yeah.
Because I think Irina would lean towards this as a safety option, but take a look at c5 as well. So here, what happens if we just play something like queen b8?
Right, just getting out of dodge, right? But again, White's got her rooks so nicely centralized. These rooks are still not in play. So whenever you open up the position, you know, it takes. Now here we think for a brief moment because...
Sure, you could play rook takes d6, but it's just going to result in trades,
in
right?
trades, right.
Which is probably good for Black, actually.
Exactly. She would be very happy to get out of her predicament. But I'm thinking that if we play a move like e4, e5, opening up this bishop and
Right.
giving this knight a square.
Tremendous control.
After bishop b4, I don't actually see, it's a pity the knight's in a pin, because otherwise knight e4 would be the ideal. Maybe e5 is early. I could perhaps play bishop c5.
Yeah, and just try to get that total dark square control.
Something like this. This is going to be a very unpleasant position for black to defend.
Oh yeah, that
Again.
looks really pretty. If we get that knight to d6, that'll
Right.
just be lovely.
But I think the problem here might be something more mundane, like just trade, and rook here. Although still, it looks to me like white has all the pluses. Domination in the center, better development, and squares. We just need to get that knight to a juicy square e4. So Irina looking very good at this moment in the game.
Yes, indeed. And we do have some questions coming in at our hashtag US Chess Champs. One that I really like by Willie Kane. He asks, how do the games of Mikhail Tal sound on Cage's harmonizer at the World Chess Hall of Fame? So one of the most beautiful attacking players on an art chess set, kind of like, how do you envision that music? Envision is totally the wrong word. How
Right.
do you hear that music?
I want to hear a harmonic play, or just like bashing sounds of cymbals, and because he changed the courses of his game so dramatically with his sacrifices. If you think you were just going to play a nice, soft, easy, flowing game, I can imagine Karpov's games as being very harmonic, but Tal's games it could be like chaotic.
Well, you can actually go over there and check it out for yourself. We do have a lot of youth programs over there at the Hall of Fame, so many of their installations actually involve things that you can play. This is not a do not touch anything museum.
Well, yeah, that's
So that set you can actually play with. So
Yes.
yet another reason to come on out here and check out the St. Louis scene for yourself. And again, we've got our hashtag US Chess Champs. We've got another question actually about the Robson game.
Okay.
So let's take a look at that.
All right.
I think the question might have been from earlier, but I'm hearing that game is pretty interesting.
All right.
It's Eric Barber asked, Ray is in his usual time trouble attic self, and Sam offered a pawn with 16 c6. Can we take a look?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, just to be clear to everybody, the time control, the players have 90 minutes for their first 40 moves, but they get a 30-second increment bonus with each move they play. Ray is one of those players that sometimes goes into these deep, deep thoughts, and that's where the term time trouble comes from, when one player misallocates his time, and then he ends up being forced to make a lot of moves very, very quickly. Let's go back a bit, because again we had this Petrov Russian defense. The players had indeed played the main line. All of these moves have been played numerous times. Although the move rook a2, I did it wrong, I apologize. The move rook a2, yes, no, sorry, I have seen that move before, rook a2. I'm more familiar with moves like bishop e3, bishop f4. But rook a2, knight a5, going after this pawn on c4. And at what point was there a pawn to be grabbed? Is it just here?
You said something about 16 on move 16. 16
On move
c6.
c6.
What happened?
16 c6.
c6 knight e5.
These moves have happened?
Yes, I believe
see.
so.
I'm sorry. Okay, 16 c6. Okay, I was about to say that what white Sam does have this threat of rook b2 to b5, attacking all of these pieces along the fifth rank. So c7, c6, stopping that rook move looks right, and then knight e5 came, and where's the pawn sacrifice? How does it go?
Well, let's see, are there any more moves? Let's hear what Grandmaster Ashley has to say about this.
Well, Jen, there's a bit of confusion. I was sitting here for a while. I had to get the technician in here to say, what's taking Ray so long? And he checked it out and he said, dude just hasn't moved. So that's what happened here. The move rook to b2 surprised him quite a bit. And in fact, c6 was not played. The move that was played was a6 to stop the threat of rook to b5. That's actually what was played in the game. Your tweeter was asking the question about c6, which, by the way, is a computer move. The computer suggests this as the best move in the position. And for white to now not worry about his a-pawn, which is under fire and looks difficult to defend anyway, because where would this rook go in order to defend this pawn, or would you waste a move like a4, which may not be any good anyway? But the move knight to e5 is the move that at least Houdini 3 is suggesting was the right way to play. And this does involve a pawn sacrifice. This pawn on a3, and after bishop to f3 chasing the queen, and the queen dropping back, and very simply rook over to e2, offering a straight exchange of bishops in this position. And now you see the pressure for white, 2 rooks on the open file. This knight is offside and very difficult to bring back into the game. Knight b3 doesn't really help because it can be attacked, and there's some discovered threats on the queen, maybe all the way to the rook, trying to win material. So, and also in this position, the very strange line after bishop to e6, a move like bishop to h6, starting to probe. You see all of white's pieces sort of ominously hovering around this king. So that's the line that I think your questioner had in mind. The computer at this position says it's dead equal, 0, 0, 0. Thanks a lot. We like that kind of explanation. Not. But after rook to b2, instead, the move that was played by Ray, and Houdini definitely does not like, is this one, a6. This one, although it allows the knight to be able to go back to this square, it's sort of like an offside move. And it seems as though knight to e5, the computer is screaming, this is fantastic now for black, that is for white. Black, if he takes now on this square, faces pretty much the same kind of thing, except now rook a2 would be played, pressure on this knight, some trouble along the lawn, diagonal, it's not blocked off because the bishop has power. So it seems like this is a very comfortable position for Sam, and he'll be playing the move knight e5, and look at that, he has already done so and is walking around. So Ray under pressure in this matchup between two of the top youngsters in the competition. Back to you, Jen and Yaz.
Well, we didn't expect this one to be mild, right?
No, for sure, for sure. Okay, Ray's choice of the Petrov. On the one hand, he says, I want to play solidly, but it looks like the game is beginning to really heat up. And it's very often in these lines of the Russian defense, the Petrov defense, that white does indeed offer his pawn on a3 as bait, so that just for all of those reasons what Maurice was saying, I didn't really pay too much attention to move rook a2. It's just the idea that when you do end up losing a pawn, as compensation, you have these doubled rooks on the e file. You have this idea, again, mentioned by Maurice, that bishop h5. And basically what you're really trying to do is play against this offside knight on a5. So not just compensation, but advantage for white. I like this very harmonious play by Sam. He's looking good in this game.
Yeah, and you know, Sam Shankland, he's had some fantastic results in the past, not just in Norway, but you know, remember the World Cup where he beat Peter Ecke?
Yes.
So he's definitely capable of playing some really high-level chess.
That knockout match was a very impressive one, and even Peter said afterwards that he really underestimated Sam.
All right, so let's see if he can bring that same type of energy here to the 2014 championship.
Exactly.
This is the time to do it.
Bring your A game, absolutely, for the biggest money tournament in chess.
Okay, now last time we looked at Kamsky Ramirez, you were remarking about how you thought that the endgame would be very pleasant for Kamsky, but that Ramirez had some resources.
Right. I actually thought that in this position, after trades, no, they didn't. He didn't play the line that I had expected, actually. I think that the line that I had looked at was knight c2, Gata made an improvement on that variation. He played bishop to d3, so that after trades, he's getting that ending we were looking at. But remember when we were mentioning that this pawn on f2 was sensitive to an attack by the knight? Well, thanks to the fact that Gata played bishop d3 and not the move knight c2, knight g4 makes no sense because the rook would just simply defend the pawn on f2. So Alejandro had to play f7, f6 to break up this very powerful dominating center that white has. Keep in mind, too, a nice addition that white has for having not played the move knight c2. He gets to play the move knight b5 as a possible threat, and either threatening a fork on c7 or simply invading to the d6 square. That's why we always say, control the center, play in the center. And this is what we have. f6 to break up the center, takes. So now black's pawn structure is a little bit loose, and the question that Gata answer is, can he put pressure on black's center? And I'm anticipating that he wants to very quickly play moves like rook e1, rook e2, or rook e3, and press on e6. At the moment, still it's okay, but maybe just more pleasant for white.
Yeah, I agree. So Kamsky, we don't always expect him to get much out of the opening, so this is a good sign for him, considering what a great technical player he is.
He's got the type of position that he really excels in, yes.
We've got a chess enthusiast on Twitter who says that 2 French advanced games in the second round of the championships, not something very usual these days.
No.
Indeed, there are a lot of openings against the French that are more typical, like the winner war, which you mentioned.
Well, it's interesting that chess really goes through these fashions, openings and defenses. One day they're played, everybody plays the Sicilian Najdorf. The next day or next month, it's all about the Dragon Sicilian. Well, basically for the better part of a year, it's really been all about the Berlin. It just seems like everybody has been playing the Berlin defense, and world champion Magnus Carlsen has been really playing the black side of Ruy Lopez's.
Just don't ask him why he likes Ruy Lopez so much.
Right.
That's from a Vice article, which just really unfairly jabbed at Magnus. They said
Really?
They said that he wasn't the nicest guy in less pleasant language.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really absurd article, but it was also kind of funny because it was so ridiculous. Well, one of the questions that this journalist asked was, what do you like about Ruy Lopez? And apparently, Magnus didn't come up with an eloquent answer.
And the journalist was upset that he didn't have a good answer.
The journalist didn't play chess at all, really.
Right.
And I guess...
No.
I guess he was just hoping that he was like saying, I thought Magnus would be really impressed by the research and depth of this question.
No, no.
I'm sorry, try harder.
No. Actually, we've really been very blessed in chess. The last world champions that we've had, Magnus and Vichy, both are really extraordinarily nice people.
Yeah, exactly.
And really sweethearted people, and I like them both very much. I think we're very blessed to have them as our champions.
And I mean, to give Maurice Ashley a little bit of credit, I mean, I was just surprised by how awesome Carlsen's interviews were at the Sinkfield Cup. I thought he was funny.
Easy, he's got a wit.
And he had a deadpan sense of humor, which I think might be part of the issue. Mm-hmm. Like, some people might not get it, but,
No, I'm a big admirer. Me too.
And we got more from Grandmaster Maurice Ashley.
Indeed, I did read that article myself, and I thought it was much ado about nothing. The guy totally overplayed it. If you have met Magnus Carlsen, the kid's pretty cool. I mean, he is as he seems. He's a pretty cool guy. I don't mean to say anything about the interviewer. Maybe Magnus was not having a great day, or maybe there was some chemistry issues between the two of them. But certainly when I was interviewing him, we had a lot of fun, and he's definitely a funny guy and very well read. Loves English humor, British humor. Just a really down-to-earth young man. So I think that was definitely overplayed in that article. But moving away from personalities for a second, check out the craziness that's going on one of our key games on board 2, or at least the second ranked player in the tournament. Gureyev with the black piece is now up a pawn, but young Lenderman is hunting him down. And take a look at this position. There's some wild lines to consider. The main problem that's happening here is that this bishop is on the wrong side of this defense, unable to help the queen with the pin on this diagonal. So this pin with a knight on f5, we all know that this combination is pretty strong. A knight on f5 and then you add a pin to it, there's danger all around. So let's look at a very simple move. We don't like the knight on f5. Let's get rid of it. I want to kill it right now. Well, guess what? It's ready to sacrifice itself with a big explosive move on g7. After king takes, you might wonder, well, is there an aggressive move I should play? Actually, here you can destroy the position with the move e5. Bam, that's it. The knight's under threat viciously. The bishop is going to capture this knight. If you take and take, you unleash the power of this rook on this open file, and suddenly it's all she wrote. The knight's dying, rook takes won't allow, bishop takes f6, attacking both king and queen. So this is a big problem, trying to get rid of the knight. Now there's a subtler move in this position for black, bishop to a6, chasing the rook off of this line first, right? Hoping now for rook e1, which is actually a reasonable move, and then dropping the bishop back and saying, okay, now I get rid of that knight on that square. Well, guess what? I can still sacrifice. Knight takes, king takes, and then a calm move, queen to c2, or even queen d2 as a matter of fact. Either one, the preparation is for the move queen b2, and possibly with the e5 thrust coming. Very crazy lines here to analyze. So black under some pressure because the youngster has thoughts on his mind, devious thoughts on his mind. So he better be careful or else he may get blown off the board and already be down in just round 2 of these championships. We see him thinking there, Gureyev, feeling the pressure. What move will he come up with to blunt this attack? Back to you, Jen and Yaz.
Thank you, Maurice. And there were some variations in there where bishop f2 would have won an exchange, but I don't think it would have mattered. That attack was just coming with brutal
E4,
force, and that's why you don't waste a white.
No, exactly. Big
women.
change going on there.
Make those whites work for you. And actually, we are going to do a little commercial, and you're going to get more information on how you can win a prize from one of our sponsors here, chess.com. Send in your questions and comments. More details, and we'll be back in a minute.
Hi, I'm Lindsay, part of the admissions team here at Paul Mitchell School St. Louis. Our campus is located on Maryland Plaza, right here in the gorgeous Central West End.
I chose Paul Mitchell, the school St. Louis, because I visited other schools, and when I was at them, I just felt like the energy level wasn't the same. It wasn't as elevated as it is here. When I came here, it just felt right. Everybody looked great. Everybody had such a great attitude. The facility was really clean and just so much more advanced.
Technology can truly enhance your education. When we brought in Chromebooks and we started using the smart TVs, we really tapped into the 21st century learner.
Being a student of Paul Mitchell is great because the learning leaders, they're there to guide you in the right direction. They give you the opportunity to make decisions on your own.
They accept you for who you are, and they're always welcome and honest and open.
We have encouraged our guests to post Google reviews. So far to date, have over 100 reviews with an average rating of 4.5 stars.
So I like that this isn't just for hair and beauty, but it's also a business college. You can learn hair, you can brush it, you can tease it, you can learn all of that, but to do business, that's something that really takes a whole different level of education.
Whether we're in the classroom or at the color bar, we're always having a great time at Paul Mitchell, the school St. Louis.
Being a student at Paul Mitchell gives you a lot of opportunity for when you're ready to get out into the real world.
Thank you for taking a sneak peek of our campus, and we can't wait for you to come and see what a Paul Mitchell education can do for you.
Hello and welcome back to the 2014 U.S. Chess Championships and U.S. Women's. I am here with Grandmaster Yasser Seirawan, and we've also got Maurice Ashley, and he's going to be interviewing one of our special guests in just a minute.
Right.
But why don't we take a quick look at one of the ideas you had on the break?
Right.
In the Lenderman-Graev excitement that he was just mentioning.
Exactly. I thought the game between Alex Lenderman and Gata was really, really heating up. And there is, after this move F3, F4 that we've seen, there is this counter-attacking idea of rook to A2 with the idea of sacrificing that exchange with rook takes G2 and going after this E4 pawn. Maurice and I, during the break, we were just looking at some wild lines like takes, takes, queen takes D5, bishop takes D5, and guess what? Thanks to this checkmating situation, we solve the pin. But what had stumped us for a moment was a different sacrifice, the sacrifice that Maurice had shown before. But in this crazy, wild position, sorry, I got to get as many captures as I can. It's hard to judge the outcome of what's going on here. At the moment, these bishops by black are still looking down towards white's king. If black can set up 2 rooks on the 7th, he's going to have great compensation for his queen.
Wow, beautiful example.
So
interesting
stuff.
It's all about whether or not white can get some kind of attack against the king, because if
Precisely.
not, I really think those rooks being connected will give black more than enough, yeah.
Exactly.
So we do have our guest with Maurice Ashley. We've got Michael Khodorkovsky. He's the president of the Kasparov Chess Foundation, and he's also a FIDE senior trainer who has a lot of experience coaching some of the top players in the nation, including the team that our young star here is a part of.
Absolutely.
Right. So we'll get some insight from Michael Khodorkovsky on some of all that with Maurice Ashley right now.
Thanks, Jen. Well, we have a special guest, Mike Khodorkovsky. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, Michael, you've been hanging around this tournament for the last few days. You've seen the magnificent chess club they have here. What's your opinion about what's happening here in the chess capital of America?
Well, actually, it's not first time that I'm here in St. Louis. I'm a big fan of the club, and we have good relations with the club as well. Here probably twice a year for different occasions. And of course, when it's U.S. Championship, it's a jewel of our U.S. event at the U.S. Chess Federation and St. Louis Chess Club. It's always a pleasure to be part of it.
Indeed, not just viewing, but also biting your nails as one of your students, because Mackenzie Molnar is in the event as well. I know you can't talk any strategy, but what are you feeling about how he's doing so far?
Well, Mac is, it's my best student for a long period of time since he was 8 years old. Now I would probably say that I'm on the capacity of his mentor rather than coach. And we did some preparation before championship, 2-3 weeks prior to championship, and I hope he will be doing well. So far, he is holding up.
So far, so good. Now, you're in charge of the Young Stars program. Please tell us about that.
We established a Young Stars program together with St. Louis Chess Club 3 years ago, and this is our 3rd year. Gary Kasparov, myself, Alexander Chernin, and other leading coaches of the world helping our stars. So we select best of the best that we think could excel and actually reach not only grandmaster level, but to become one day one of the leading chess players in the world. In our program right now, already well known, Kaden Troff, Sam Sivian, Jeffrey Zhang, and A. Wander Liang, as well as we're always would like to have girls, and Sarah Chiang was part of the program, and now we keep an eye on participant of this championship, 13 years old.
Yes, indeed.
Ashrita
Swarwan.
Ashrita is very good. I already interacted with her before at the Pan Am Championship and World Youth Championship. So I know what she's capable of. And actually, she proved it yesterday.
Indeed, indeed. Although she's having a tough day today, but it's still a ways to go before she starts to be able to dominate at the very top.
Yeah.
Tell us, you mentioned Gary Kasparov. We know you've been a confidant and good friends with him for quite some time. He's running for a very important election, the election for FIDE president, International Chess Federation head. What's happening there? Anything we should know about? How's the campaign going?
Well, Gary announced his willingness to take charge of FIDE in last Congress, during the last Congress in Tallinn, Estonia, and he announced that he is running. Since then, he started his campaign. I think it goes very well, and he wants to make changes in a good way, in a positive way, that all federations, regardless of their size, will prosper. He wants to reduce fees for those federations. He wants them to be part of the process, as well as he wants to bring as many sponsors, corporate sponsors and private foundation sponsors, to chess. And as an example, he has a very good team that he was able to assemble. And one of the members of the team is Rex Sinquefield, who will be on his ticket as a treasurer of FIDE. And hopefully on August 11th, when election will take place in Tromsø, Norway, there will be new leadership of FIDE.
An exciting time for chess indeed, and I know that Gary has been getting the frequent flyer miles going. I believe he's in Africa right now doing a big tour.
Well, I can tell you that on the way to St. Louis, I was at the airport. He called me and asked when is my flight. I said it's in 20 minutes going to St. Louis, and he said, well, my flight departs in 15 minutes, so we have 10 minutes to talk.
Always conducting business is that great champion we've had, and looking now to be president of the International Chess Federation. Mike Khodorkovsky, thanks so much for joining our show.
Thank you for having me.
Back to you, Jen and Yaz.
Love it. I love that story.
One of the really cool things that happened last year when I was here in St. Louis, with the St. Louis Chess Club hosted some summer camps, and we got kids from all over the United States coming to the summer camp. But what was a real nice bonus was that Gary was conducting a seminar for the All-Star kids also here in St. Louis. So I got a chance to see some of the really young, bright, talented kids, Sam Sevian and Caden Trove included.
And that's right, and
Sarah
Caden Trove recently got his Grandmaster title.
Wow.
So he got his final norm recently.
Right.
Which is awesome.
And we're talented. The United States has really a lot of really good, strong junior players.
That's right, and it's gotten a lot better.
And indeed, and because of the Kasparov Chess Foundation, good work, they cooperate here with the St. Louis Chess Club and Scholastic Center as well.
With the Young Stars program.
Yes, indeed. And very, very nice. I was going to say, it's very funny, we haven't looked at it yet, but Daniel's game, Daniel Naroditsky against Josh Friedel, it actually started out as a Catalan, and it's like the day of the French. I mean, it really has the same French defense pawn structure, and so we're seeing a lot of those games, a lot of those structures being played in today's round. The last move of Daniel actually needs a little bit of explanation, because he played this strange-looking retreating move, knight on d2 to b1. Well, first of all, the knight on d2 is not great. The advanced squares e4 and c4 are both obviously protected by the pawn on d5. So this knight on d2 needs a new circuit. Daniel played knight b1 because he's thinking that if he can get his knight to b5, that's a permanent outpost. It can't be kicked away by any of black pawn. So he's preparing to invest 3 tempi. That's a lot of tempi to bring his knight to a more active outpost.
And that's but it's also a pretty close position, so.
So he can afford to maneuver a lot. But on the other hand, when you play that move knight b1, after knight b4, this bishop in the French defense usually ends up being a very passive bishop. After knight b4, bishop b5, you are giving black an opportunity to trade bishops. And so I think Josh is doing okay.
I agree.